Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we have a special guest with us for the meta snapshot for patch 14.3, and that is going to be a player named Ashmoo. Ashmoo has gotten 4th place in the Vegas Open, and he competes in a lot of other TFT tournaments as well. Let's get into the top comps. We're going to go over how to play them, what's important, and there are a couple of differences in this patch versus last patch, so we got to know what they are in order to climb. So let's get right into it. In the S tier, Heartsteel Ezreal is still very good despite the nerfs it got. Like slight nerfs, you know, it wasn't like huge nerfs. It wasn't like they got a sledgehammer and just wiped it off the face of the earth. It was just like small touches. Still the best comp so far. After that, Riven Reroll, very strong. Pentakill, very nice as well. And then there's a newish comp. Some people were playing it a little bit last patch, but it's much more popular now. It's called the Ahri Warriors comp. It's just Ahri and a bunch of frontline beefy units. We'll get more into the details later, of course. And then at the end of the video, I'll also be releasing how I'm going to be approaching the patch based on my own playstyle. But obviously, everyone's got their own. Let's get back into the rest of the list. We have Ahri Reroll, very strong, probably the best 1-cost reroll right now. Kayle Reroll, very solid at 2 costs. And then we have Twin Terror. Twin Terror did get nerfed, but it's still very powerful if used correctly. So we're going to go into a little bit of how to do that. Next up in the A tier, we have Executioner Reroll. A tier is kind of the tier where you want to go for them when you have like a very specific headliner or like perfect items or something. That's kind of how I view the A tier, whereas S tier, you could kind of default into it or like lean into it a little bit at the start of the game. But Seraphine Reroll, Katarina, Punk Reroll, Misfortune, Olaf Yasuo, True Damage, Twisted Fate Disco, Country, and then Yone at the very end. And then in the B tier, some people are still playing Ahri Sentinel. And then we kind of have like the fun tier in the C tier. Don't really need to pay too much attention to those comps. But onto the S tier, we have Ezreal Heartsteel. So level 8 Heartsteel, it's going to be looking like this. You want to be running 5 Heartsteel to get a lot of those stacks. So you want to be playing 5 Heartsteel until you reach like level 9. If you can afford to, that is. Because obviously health total is going to be the most important thing. And you cannot play 5 Heartsteel when you're at 5 life, you know? So obviously Heartsteel responsibly, and this is what like a sample board of that looks like. So we have Ezreal in the backline, blue buff, red buff, by far his 2 best items. I wouldn't say they're super mandatory, but they are by far the 2 best items on him. Zed is going to have the Edge of Night, definitely like super important on Zed. And then underrated item, Hextech Gunblade. A lot of people default to BT Titans or BT Edge of Night in the front line, but Gunblade's actually really powerful on Zed. The ability power on Zed increases the, I think the amplification on Zed. So it's really powerful stuff. And it heals a lot of other important units on your team. Deathblade or any other item third is going to be fine. Obviously, you don't have to go Gunblade. I'm like simping for Gunblade right now, but if it's a BT, obviously that's still extremely good. Slam the item, play it, you're going to be good to go. The only other mandatory item in this comp is going to be the Even Shroud. Even Shroud is crucial because you are doing a lot of physical damage. You need physical penetration to do that. The rest of the comp, it's just going to be like random bullcrap. Set plus Zac, or like Set plus Poppy if you don't have Zac. Or maybe you don't have Lucian yet. So you could do like Zac, Set, Poppy, frontline if you don't have the Lucian quite yet. Aphelios, MF in the back. You do need Big Shot because Ezreal just doesn't like make any big shots if he doesn't have Big Shot, you know, it's no surprise there. And then you run all the 5 Heartsteel Jokers, and ideally you replace them, and the replace board is down here. This is like the capped level 9 board. So a lot of people wonder, or like I say a lot of times, hey, this comp's really good for top 4ing if you have this board here. And that's going to be true for a lot of cases, but sometimes people want to win. There exists some people who think a comp is bad because it gets 3rd. Well, if you really want to win, here's the capped level 9 board. Obviously, you still need a hit. It's a lot of legendaries. And of course, if you play a lot of golden units or yellow units, they're going to do really, really well. So same stuff in the back. Ezreal, Lucian, MF. You could throw in more Jazz if you want. Add in Dazzler if you get a Ziggs. If not, replace the Zac and the Poppy with the Illaoi and Yorick in the front line. And then you could also add in Thresh because he's Guardian with Yorick. Very solid front line there. And overall, just a very solid comp. You can move the Zed items over to Yorick, but really, legendaries can use all sorts of different items. Don't be like too greedy about it. And by the way, if you want to read more into how to play these comps, or if you want to reference the guide while you are playing the game, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where we update this meta snapshot every single week. And you can get a lot more details. We have like leveling patterns here. We have like the requirements, headliners, item holders, spatula holders, and the how to play section, and other alternate items. So obviously, like, there are some I didn't mention, like, yeah, any damage items on Ezreal is going to be chilling, but you have like a more comprehensive list over here. All right, on to the next comp we have is Riven Reroll. Riven Reroll's got to be one of my favorite comps. Like, holy cow. The only issue is that you are super duper item dependent. So look at Riven. 3 mandatory items. QSS, Giant Slayer, Bloodthirster. Obviously, if you have very specific augments, you could replace some of the items. I've seen full damage Rivens really pop off when they have Banshee's Veil from a support augment, and they also have like Harm Assist 3 from the Prismatic augment. Like, I've seen that before, and they go like Giant Slayer, IE, and like Titan's Resolve, and it completely blows everything up. But if you don't have those augments, you need to get healing, you need to get the CC immunity from the Quicksilver, and you get that most reliably through items. So you see that on Riven there. After that, we have Mordekaiser with the Even Shroud. You're doing physical damage. You need Even Shroud for the physical penetration. And then after that, Viego, he's going to be your anti-heal robot. He's just going to have either a Morello or a red buff on him, just so he applies the healing debuff to all the units when he like does that little jump thing. Very solid utility unit, or he could be your secondary carry if you get like a ton of items. But you could also secondary carry Caitlyn, lots of different options there. And for this comp, you want to reroll at level 7. So you need to look closely at the leveling pattern whenever you see like reroll up here, because it's going to be different for each and every one of them. So just check out this little like write-up over here. The short of it is you want to get to level 7, roll a lot on level 7 to stabilize, and then slow roll, econ back up, get Riven 3-star, and kind of go from there. A lot of people ask me like, oh, you're using some terms that I don't really understand. How do I know what you're talking about when you say slow roll? Well, you could head on over to the website again, go to the TFT dictionary, and then just like Control F, whatever term you kind of want to use. We have like most of them in there. But going back into the tier list, we were at the Pentakill comp now. This is what the level 8 board looks like. We have the Akali Karthus comp. Some people call it that. It's like 2 different names for the same thing, right? And then we also have Viego with the Superfan. So who is your primary carry when you do this? Well, whoever you get headliner, because you run Superfan. So notice we have 2 items on most of our units. We have 2 items on Akali, 2 items on Viego, and then like we do have the 3 items on Karthus. But honestly, the Superfan item kind of replaces one of them every single time. You just take any of these headliner and try to 2-star the rest of them. So there are a couple of tricky situations when you do play this comp. For example, if you have like a Viego chosen, but your bench looks like here, I'll just move all these people up. But your bench is like 1 Karthus, 2 Viegos, and no Akalis, and you see a Viego headliner. Maybe you don't want to take it sometimes, because if you get an Akali headliner, you're only 1 off the Viego too, and those are some rare scenarios where you might skip on a headliner. But for like 90% of cases or 80% of cases, you just take the first headliner you see among these 3 units and then play them from there. Obviously, it depends on what your bench is, but I just want to make that little note for everyone standing in the back, just so they know. Let's get back into the comp. Standard leveling pattern here. You want to get to level 8 as fast as possible. This comp can stabilize a little bit at like level 6 at 3-2 or level 7 at 4-1 in some cases, depending on your economy, of course. But you generally really want to roll a lot of your gold on level 8, because all the 4 costs are like super expensive, and it's really hard to hit them on level 7. So level 8, you get the headliner odds, you get higher odds on 4 costs in general. Let's look at some of the odds. Let's scroll all the way up to the top, head on over to leveling. I believe at the very bottom, we have the champion pool size and the headliner odds. So if you ever need like a neat little reference, they are on the website too. So at level 8 over here, we have 70% chance for a headliner for 3 costs, and then 30% for 4 costs. Getting to level 9 is super expensive, so it's a little greedy to go 9 unless you're like 100 health the entire game. So you generally want to roll at level 8 for your 4 cost headliners. Also, at level 8, compared to level 7, you pretty much see almost like double the amount of 4 costs. And again, like it's too expensive to level up to level 9, so that's why people do it on 8 in most cases. So going back here, where were we? We were at the Pentakill comp, and here you want to just round out your team with as many Pentakills as you can, and you also want to add in the Superfans, of course. So we have 5 Pentakill right now with the Viego chosen, and Viego, of course, gets the headliner item, plus you could build 2 of your own items on him. He could use all sorts of stuff, so any of the AD Bruiser items work on him. We have like a full item list down here, and of course you could use him as like a red buff robot as well, as we did before. But let's move on into the next comp, which is Ahri Warriors. This is going to be one of the newer comps. It was played a little bit in the last patch, but I think it got more popular as time went on. This is going to be an Ahri plus like random crappers in the front comp. So you really just run Ahri with as many KDA as possible, with the Superfans, and then with Echo and Zed. So the way this works is that Zed doesn't need much to really get off. So in the Ahri comp, all he needs is Evelynn, and then he will do whatever he pleases, you know? He's a great unit. He doesn't rely on much. You just need to throw any bit of items on him. So for headliners here, you want either Zed or Ahri, and then you also get the Superfan item. So they're both pretty low maintenance. Actually, Ahri's kind of high maintenance. She wants like a bunch of Spellweavers, a bunch of KDAs, but Zed, he really just needs 2 Crowd Diver. He doesn't even need EDM. EDM is like whatever on him. So once you have that set up, you really just need any sort of random items for Zed, and that could be literally anything. Any of the Bruiser items, any AD items will work on him, and then you throw all your AP items on Ahri. Look at this comp, it's beautiful. We use like pretty much one of every component. We have tears for Ahri, we have 1 bow for Ahri, we have a belt for Ahri, we have a belt and sword for Zed. I guess he does have like 2 more swords with a Deathblade, but obviously like there are some replacements for Deathblade, even if it is like one of his best items. And then Nico can just hold like any random tank items, preferably some sort of anti-heal because it's hard to get anti-heal into the comp. And then for your leftover items, you could throw them on either Sona or Echo depending on what they are. Obviously, if you have like a 2-star Sona, prioritize getting items on Sona. If you don't have Sona at all, obviously throw random items on Echo. But essentially for this comp, you just want to roll down on stage 4-2, get Ahri or Zed headliner, and then the reason why you want to play this comp is because it is smoother and easier to hit than Pentakill. All you have to be careful of is planning your items. Another important thing about this comp is that it spikes in stage 4, but then falls off stage 5 and beyond, so you need to get legendaries to fully cap out the board. Similar to the Heartsteel comp that we saw above, like we have a level 8 board and then we also have a level 9 board. Just throw, if they're shiny, if they're like glowing yellow around them, just buy them, or like orange in the shop, whatever color it is, buy them and play them because they're going to be powerful. Next up we have is Kayle Reroll. So Kayle Reroll is a decently solid comp right now. One of the best reroll comps, probably the best 2-cost reroll, because honestly, she doesn't have much competition. Let's do some data checking. So I'm going to go to teamfight.lol. I'm going to go to stats, and then I'm going to go to champions. So over here, let's look at 2-cost. Just type in 2 right there. Okay, so 3-star rate. We have Pantheon and Twitch at the top. They're punk, so that makes sense. Then we have Jax, but Jax averages a 4.55 right now. Not very good. Senna, 4.21, pretty solid. But then we scroll down a bit, we have Kayle, 18.74. But 3.88 average 3-star placement. That is very good. That's exactly what you want to see. If we sort by here, like clearly she is the best 2-cost reroll. But then again, doesn't have that much competition. It's kind of like big fish in like a small pond, you know, like 2-cost reroll, kind of like a niche pick. No one's really like hard forcing these that much, so obviously it's not hard to kind of like shine there. But just build Rageblade on Kayle and a Gunblade, and then like more Rageblades if you want. Superfan item does give her a Rageblade, so like if you don't get one, it's not the end of the world, but it is still good to like stack them up because she really is just like a auto attack monster. She just like attacks like this as if she's like slapping everyone in the world. And then after that, Viego, of course, classic anti-heal robot. Just put that on him. Run the Superfans, run some Pentakill, run 3 Edgelord, call it a day after that. All right, so when do you want to go for this comp? So if you have a Superfan opener, or if you get a bunch of early Kayles, that's when you generally want to lean into this. I'd say by like stage 3, maybe you want, maybe like a Kayle 2-star without the headliner. And if you do have the headliner, maybe around like at least 4 Kayles, preferably 5. You know, if you have 4 Kayles, you better have like tons of Rage Blades on her. If it's 5 Kayles, then maybe you only need 1 of them. I'd say that's like a decent starting point for like trying to navigate. Obviously, every game is different. Just because I say something here doesn't mean it always applies, but most of the time it will, maybe like 80, 90%. But yeah, just like follow the item recommendations down here. That's really all you have to do for this 2-cost reroll comp. What I love about 2-cost reroll comps is that they're very easy to play. 3-cost reroll is a little bit more difficult because you have to know how to stabilize in the mid game. For example, if you are stuck on 1-star Riven and you're going Riven Reroll, you're not going to be winning a lot of rounds. And like sometimes you don't even want to put items on your Riven because you want to put it on the headliner Riven. After that, once you do get the headliner Riven, you'll win a couple rounds. But then after a while, if you don't natural a bunch more Rivens when you roll down, you'll end up being really weak and you might not know when to all in to go for that Riven 3-star. You might not know how to like stabilize your board without the 3-star. And so it adds a lot more elements of thinking into play. 1-cost reroll, on the other hand, suffers from the opposite problem. Like sometimes you roll down for 1-cost reroll, you just don't hit and you just lose a game. So that's one of the bad things about 1-cost reroll. Another struggle is that once you cap out the board, you win every round throughout stage 4. And then starting stage 5, the comp drops off like a rock unless you know how to get to level 9, roll down for like stronger units, know what traits to put in. Maybe instead of traits, you put in random legendaries. You have to know what to do with every single one of those 1-cost reroll comps. Now let's compare both of those to 2-cost reroll. 2-cost reroll is pretty easy to do because when you stabilize on stage 3-2, which is typically when that happens, you're already naturally level 6 in a lot of cases. Like most people level up to level 6 at 3-2, no matter what they do when they do standard play. So here, it's super easy to find a Kayle 2-star to really stabilize your board, or a Kayle headliner. After that, getting them to 3-star does not cost that much gold compared to a 3-cost 3-star. So you're able to hit that cap pretty decently, and obviously 2-cost 3-stars are better than 1-cost 3-stars in like 99% of cases. So the comp doesn't fall off as much. That's kind of why I like 2-cost rerolls a bunch. It's just the easiest comps to play in my opinion. After that, we have Twin Terror. All right, so Twin Terror got nerfed a bunch. Let's look at it a little bit. So we could go to stats, augments, type in Twin Terror. Ooh, 4.43, 4.61. And if we compare that to last patch, 4.2, 4.26. So I checked with Ashmu on this. I was like, I know you like Twin Terror, but data says otherwise. But he says everyone's playing this comp wrong. So let's get into a little bit of how he approaches it. So for Vex, lesson slots are going to be blue buff, Rabadon's Death Cap, and Morellonomicon. Samira, just throw random AD items on her, and then the second Vex you want to itemize too. I think people don't really itemize the second Vex as much. They might focus more on the Samira items, they might focus more on the Twitch items, they might focus more on the tank items, but I think itemizing both Vexes might be the difference maker. Another tricky thing about this comp is that you want to try to save as much health as possible in the early game, and sometimes, like if you're a Master 0 LP player, a lot of times you get put in a little bit more difficult lobbies. Sometimes a bunch of Master 0 LP players get put into Challenger lobbies, for example, and they don't know how to save HP as much. So data is not everything. You guys all know me. I love looking at data. I think it's a really neat way to kind of get better at the game and have like a quick check to know like what's good, what's bad. But you have to remember, there's a lot of bias in data. And looking at Master Plus, if you're talking to someone who's like trying to climb really high, or if you're trying to compare yourself to the average, because we all have different play styles. So even if you are average ranked, whatever the rank is, like let's say you put in Diamond and you are Diamond, sometimes it's not helpful to compare yourself to the average, because maybe someone is a master Punk player and they love extended play. They could do so well on it and it just doesn't matter. But maybe you suck at Punk and you don't know how to use extended play. So even though extended play is a 4.09, which is very good, you don't want to go for that because you don't know what you're doing. But let's scroll down a bit, and let's say you are really good at playing like Fast 9 or like playing like heavy econ comps. Maybe something like Hedge Fund or like Level Up are more up your wheelbarrow because you spent the time to really perfect that playstyle. And even though the data looks horrible for it, if you are the master at like super econing, like obviously those augments are going to be really good for you. Or if you pick the right spot to play those comps, because that's another thing about the data. Some augments are only good because people pick them at the right time. So Young, Wild, and Free, on stage 2, if you pick it there, you average a 5.05, which is complete garbage. Stage 3, if you pick it there, you average a 3.92. Why might that be? Well, you would only pick Young, Wild, and Free at stage 3 if you have a lot of health. So obviously if you have a lot of health already, you're probably going to do better in that game, right? Because it just means you had like a good early game. So a lot of bias in the data, but that's why it's still in the S tier, despite the data not really reflecting that. So this board stabilizes really hard on 4-1, 3-cost reroll, again, a little bit trickier than 2 costs. And then you cap out the board with Amumu 3 and Vex 3 and Samira 3. Eventually you want to replace your Pantheon with Thresh as well. So in the late game, the board might look slightly different, but that's why you got to read the notes on the website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, you know? Sometimes a video isn't enough because there's only so much time I have to explain things, but of course, like all the item recommendations are here as well. But for Vex, you really want Death Cap and Morello and then blue buff or adaptive health. So my favorite thing to do is just getting rods on Carousel when I play this comp, because you could use like so many of them. There's like infinite uses for it. Like worst case, absolute worst case, if you get too many rods, you could just throw Crown Guard on your Amumu, right? It's not the end of the world. But if you don't have Death Cap, the difference between Death Cap and other items, I feel like is like so big. So that's why I like getting like tiers and rods. But once I have blue buff, I just focus on rods whenever I play this comp. Next one up we have is the A tiers Executioner. So Executioner kind of competes with the Twin Terror comps a little bit. That's one important thing to keep in mind when playing this. you will get contested if there are other Twin Terror players. So scout around, you have to really check and see. But overall, it's like plays kind of the same. You want to do 3-cost reroll. The only difference is you want to add in a bunch of 4 costs later on, such as the Akali and Karthus to get to 6 Executioner. But same items, like same units, it's just not the extra copies. So that's really all there is to this comp. Next one up we have is Seraphine Reroll. So Seraphine Reroll, another 2-cost reroll comp. This one's a little bit different. I don't think it stabilizes as hard as Kayle. That's why it's in the A tier, whereas Kayle's in the S tier. Let's look at the data again. We just have to go back, right? We had it up before. We go to 2 costs. And then, yeah, Seraphine 4.06, very solid. Nothing to scoff at there. That's pretty solid. That's around where most like 2 costs, 3 stars kind of place, in my opinion, like from what I see historically in the data. We could go back to like patch 13.24b, for example. Like, remember Jax was like very good at that time. Well, he's a 4.07, but he had like a much higher play rate. So there are some differences there. Let's go back here. The rest of the comp is going to be KDAs and Spellweavers because those are the traits that Seraphine has. Obviously, you just want to stack them in. But the great thing about low-cost comps is that you could run a lot of the crappy units. So we have 2 1-cost units and then 3 3-cost units and only like 2 units that are 4 and 5 costs. So because you're playing 2-cost reroll, you can afford to get all these 1-cost units, and they also give a superfan item to Seraphine. And conveniently, they also give her a bunch of complementary traits because that's just what they are. I can't tell you anything else after that. It just is, some things just are, you know? But to play this comp, you want to do a similar leveling pattern to the Kayle comp. You want to level up to level 6 on stage 3-2, stabilize, get Seraphine Headliner, throw your items on her, econ back up to 50 gold, and then slow roll after that. And then after you hit Seraphine 3, you want to level up, add in Ahri and Sona. Ahri is going to be the secondary carry, so if you have extra tiers, throw it on her. Blue buff is going to be great, and then you're good to go from there. Next comp up we have is Katarina Reroll. This is another 2-cost reroll comp, a little bit weaker than Kayle, kind of like the same story. The reason why I think is because there aren't that many units that kind of like complement Katarina that much, because she doesn't use country. Like, there's only 1 country in this build, right? She just relies on Crowd Diver, so you're losing like a little bit of value because of that. But it's all good. Like, if you have good items on her, which is Jeweled Gauntlet plus Handed Justice, and then she gets another Handed Justice from the Superfans, she's going to be killing a lot of units when she's 3-starred, and especially if you have 6 Crowd Diver. It's a little difficult to get to 6 Crowd Diver, but once you do, that's where the comp truly shines. Get the Qiyana in there. The reason why she's like in a weird spot in the bag is because you want to throw her in front of wherever their tanks are. Do not default position Qiyana. That's another thing. Whenever you look at my guides, like, yeah, you could do like what's called an AFK position, as you see here. Most of these, like, if you just leave them in the positions where they are and then don't touch them for the entire game, like, you'll probably be fine, you know? But there are some cases where, like, you don't want to just blindly copy, and, like, this is definitely one of those important times. Qiyana, you want to put in front of their item holders because she copies items and throws them to your team. So that's why, like, you don't want to just put her in the center. I could just, like, have her in the center over here chilling, and then you just default it there. And most people do put their item holders, like, right across from her. But there are going to be games where, like, they put their item holder on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, and then you just lose a lot of value on Qiyana. So, like, be awake, be present in the game when you play. Look out for wherever you need to watch her. Look out for wherever you need to put her in front of whoever their like main item holders are in the front line. But yeah, pretty much round out the comp with like Crowd Diver, Superfan, and you're going to be good to go from there. Another thing to note is that whenever you do play reroll comps, artifact items are super good. So Zhonya's is incredible on Katarina in this build. Let's look at some of the artifact items. We could go to items. And then click on, where is it, artifacts down here. I just want to do like kind of like a super short rundown on like some of those real standout artifact items on specific reroll comps. So like Riven, for example, if you get a Death's Defiance on Riven, where is it? It's over here. Super good, like disgusting level amount of good. Collector on something like Twitch or Samira, incredible. Trickster's Glass on one of your complementary 3-star units when you're doing a reroll. What I mean by that is, let's scroll up a little bit. When you go for, let's say, Executioner reroll, your main units are like Vex, Samira, and Amumu, but like your main carry is Vex, right? But if you put like a Trickster's on like 3-star Samira, maybe she doesn't have many items, or like 3-star Amumu, you just get like 2 copies of 3 stars. It's extremely powerful, so it's just a way to get like more free value. Oh, another thing. You do not need anti-heal on Katarina because her ability already wounds people, which is a healing reduction in its own. That's another thing to kind of keep in mind there. Let's move on into the next comp. It's going to be Punk Reroll. So Punk Reroll, one of the best, the Punk Reroll, one of the best like low elo comps in like the history of TFT maybe, because it's so easy to play. Let's look at Jinx stats. Let's type in Jinx over here. Uh-oh. Like, even in Master Plus, she's 4.18. So that means she's just, like, too good right now, in my opinion. But let's go to Platinum. I've done this before, but, like, 3.45, like, holy cow. She's an incredible unit. The lower you go, you could put in, like, Bronze there. I'm sure it'll be, like, even higher. But the base of the comp is just 4 Punk, 2 Rapidfire, and then Vex and Amumu. So Vex and Amumu are just super splashable because they both apply crowd control effects to the enemy team. So they just are free stuns, and then they have complementary synergy. So Vex gives Executioner for Twitch, Amumu gives Guardian for Pantheon, and they both give each other Emo. That's lots of good news there. So you do prefer Rapidfire Jinx. What you can do if you get Punk Jinx is go for a Spatula on the carousel. Go for, what's it called, 6 Punk. Very, very strong stuff there. Just make sure you have some sort of armor penetration here. So Last Whisper or Even Shroud going to be your go-tos there. And of course, do a 1-cost reroll for this build. And also use your Punk rerolls every single round. Next up, we have is Misfortune reroll. Misfortune, man, I kind of like her a little bit. I think I've been over this a couple of times. She's not my favorite comp to go, but when I do go for her, I always have a good time. You know, I guess that's just jazz, baby, you know? So what you want to do is, like, you pretty much have to play this board. There isn't, like, too much flexibility, I'd say, because you want to fit all the jazz stuff in. So Jazz requires as many traits as you can, so you kind of see that on the left here. There are some variants where if you don't have the super fans, you go for other things, but I think re-rolling for like Echo 3, Nico 3, and MF 3, sometimes Bard 3 as well, is going to be the way to go. Just make sure you don't commit the cardinal sin of re-roll comps, which is 3-starring a unit and not putting items on them. So if you 3-star Bard and you don't have items for Bard, not very good. If you 3-star Echo and all your tank items are on Nico, not very good either. So just make sure you don't like commit that sin whenever you do go for like certain comps, but pretty simple stuff. Just literally play all the units you see on your screen here. It's not that flexible, and roll at level 7 because that's when you get the best odds for 3-cost units. Sometimes you can go to level 8 and roll there, but like generally it's going to be on level 7. Next up we have is Olaf Reroll. So Olaf, pretty decent comp overall. It got nerfed like a tiny bit. It affected it, I don't think it was that much. Let's look at the 1-cost reroll again. So if we look at here, 3-star average placement. Oh, let's go back to Master Plus. So we have, okay, come on, no one's doing Lilia 3-star, but where's Olaf? He's 4.33. Yeah, you like to see it a little bit higher because this assumes you hit him. So anything above 4.5 is above average. 4.5 is average, just in case everyone was wondering. But 4.33 is not that good because it assumes you have an Olaf 3-star. So there are going to be games where you have Olaf 2-star. How are you going to do? Probably not so well, right? So the comp does slightly worse than 4.33. Granted, getting 3-star 1-cost isn't that difficult in most cases, but you know, sometimes people can't hit. So it definitely adds to like the bias in the data. So again, that's another time where like data is like, you need to interpret it at least like a little bit. I'm not saying you have to have a PhD in like analytics or like data science or something like that, but like at least think about it intuitively, like for maybe 5 seconds when you look at things, like at least 5 seconds. Obviously, the more the better. But let's move on into the next comp. We have Yasuo Reroll, another strong 1-cost comp. Where's Yasuo down here? He is at a 4.36. So for me personally, I you guys know this. Like, I love Yasuo because my friend plays it a lot. I see it in action a lot. But only go for this if you have a ton of Yasuos, because unlike other comps where like Ahri Reroll, for example, if you don't hit Ahri 3, it's still like decent. You still win some rounds in stage 4 with Ahri 2-star. I don't know why, but it happens. But Yasuo, you need him 3-star. And then even then, he still falls off in the later parts of the game because once he stops one-tapping people, because he has an execute effect on his, what's it called, his true damage bling bonus, he's just not going to be smacking as much in the late game because people have like bigger health pools. People are running a Zac 2 instead of a Cassante 2. Like, he can't like hit it a couple times, ult, and kill them. It just doesn't work that way. So that's kind of one of the struggles for this comp. But Yasuo is a great item holder for any of the 4-cost melee carries, such as like Akali, Viego, Zed, Riven, Yone, things like that. So worst case scenario, when you are playing Yasuo Reroll, you can pivot into something else like super easy. That's what I love about this comp. Next one up we have is True Damage. Okay-ish comp right now, like definitely a step down from the rest, but overall still pretty solid. Caitlyn did get a couple of buffs, so if you do like True Damage Caitlyn, pretty solid build there. This is just like a classic level 8 comp. Go for a Colleague and Caitlyn duo carry, Blitzcrank as a tank. It's kind of like a budget version of the Ezreal build. So instead of going like Ezreal Zed, you go Caitlyn plus, what's his name? Akali. And then after that, instead of Blitzcrank, you go for like a Zac. You know, that's like the only two differences between the comps. Let's go back down. The next comp up was Twisted Fate Disco Dazzler. So if you like going AP, first of all, I don't know why you would. AD is so much better this patch and last patch, but it did get buffed a little bit. Let's take a look at the change. So we have, where's Twisted Fate? Twisted Fate over here, 4.47. Could be a little bit better, you know. Ironically, he's actually a higher average placement than the Ezreal, but one important thing to keep in mind is that play rate matters a ton. So Twisted Fate's play rate is 0.75. That means there are 0.75 players of Twisted Fate every game. So that means there are games where people don't even go it a lot of times. And then for Ezreal, there are 2 players going for it every single game. So obviously, if you're contested, you're not going to do as well. So that's why the average placement of Twisted Fate is higher than Ezreal. But overall, like, still a solid comp. You just have a ability power start. Maybe you need to slam a Shojin early. Maybe you slammed a Rage Blade early. Go for Twisted Fate, you know? And then the build is just like this. It's just 6 disco or like 5 or 6 disco, depending if you have the headliner or not, and then just add in complementary synergies. So Ziggs is great for Dazzler, obviously. Sona is great for Spellweaver. Echo's great for Sentinel and Spellweaver. And then we have Illaoi for Bruiser. You could also add in Thresh. Thresh gives Guardian. So lots of different options there. And of course, Fast 8 with this board. Next build up we have is Country Reroll. Country Reroll is pretty solid. It's just like a little bit contested right now because all the Vex and Amumu's are taken all the time. It kind of suffers from this all like for the past couple of sets. Let's look at some of the Country builds. So if we look at average placement, where's Samira? 4.6. 3-star average placement is going to be looking like a 3.91. So it's in like the bottom half of the 3-cost units, but like all the 3-cost units are so strong right now. Like Vex super strong, Amumu. Who else do people go? Like Misfortune, Riven. I guess it isn't like that different, but like you can see already, they're like kind of in different tiers as you can see here. The main carries you see are going to be Vex, Riven, Samira, Misfortune, and Yone, and Lux. Oh, we need to talk about Lux. Don't forget that. Don't fall for the bait of Lux Reroll. People are like making new comps about Lux because she got buffed recently, but don't fall for the trap. There's a term called like noob tricking or something like that, and it is a decent comp if you get it for free, but you can see from the data right here, it's like a deep step below all the other 3-cost comps, and that's after her buff. But people might be overplaying her a little bit because it just got buffed, so maybe that's why maybe people are contesting themselves or something like that. But Yone is a little bit difficult to play because everyone's playing Heartsteel, so you get grief there, so that's why he's a little lower on the tier list right now. We haven't even talked about him yet. But you can see like a 0.2 difference between Vex and Riven and Samira, or I guess this is like 0.1, and then Samira and Misfortune are kind of close together. But like, again, Misfortune, they get taken a lot from the AD flex player, so it's sometimes hard to find her. But overall, it's still a solid comp if you hit it. Urgot, really good with the red buff because he like attacks in a cone, applies it really well. And this comp is really good if you get like a country start in the early game. So like country start is like one of the best stage 2 boards in my opinion because Hecarim just completely smurfs on everyone. And you just build upon that. So you have a ton of gold from win streaking, you get to reroll for everything, you hit everything 3-star, and then you keep winning after that. But next build up we have is Yone Reroll, one of my personal favorites because, I don't know, like, I think Yone was one of my first reroll comps that I like tried to learn in the set when it came out. So there's always like a soft spot for Yone there. He is really good if you have specific augments for him. So we could take a look at some of the augments, right? Stuff like Vampirism is really good on him. Heavy hitters I like a lot. Even Freaky Friday, because you could put one Trinity Force on him and put one on someone else. What else do we have here? I'm just like scrolling down a bit. There are obviously like a ton of augments that work on him. Hologram is really funny. If you get 2 3-star Yones, it's pretty solid. It's not the best thing in the world. Help is on the way, or any of the support items are really good because you're able to get like Banshee's Veil on him, or like a Zeke's Herald buffs him up a bunch. Any artifact item is pretty good on him too if you get like Death Dance especially. What else am I missing here? Obviously, Live for Danger is good. Last Stand is incredible. I've seen a cut above work, but obviously there are better choices. Jeweled Lotus, pretty solid if you don't have the Infinity Edge. Harmesis, very solid. Like, Harmesis is probably so insane. Like, I played Harmesis 3 on Yone once. I didn't even have a healing item on him, and he was completely obliterating everything and still healing a ton. Very solid guy there. But yeah, just 3-cost reroll pattern for Yone, same as usual. Throw in the units you see on your screen here. Not too complicated. If you do get Crowd Diver Headliner, go for 6 Crowd Diver. You need to add in Evelyn, and then you're going to be like more than chilling. B tier we have is Ahri Sentinel. So Ahri Sentinel, no one really plays this anymore. I'm going to leave it in here because there is like some situations where you play it. And then after that, we have the C tier. Like, don't play the C tiers. Like, Jax got buffed, but like, it's not very nice, you know? And then, yeah, these comps are not serious. So don't play these down here. Focus at the top. We have, again, like Heartsteel Ezreal, Riven, classic bread and butters, Pentakill. Kayle is going to be like one of my favorites because it's easy to play. Ahri Warriors, one of the new additions to the meta snapshot. But let's sum up what I'm going to do. So I'm going to try to force Heartsteel every single time. If I do not get Heartsteel, there are some backup plans. But if I do get Heartsteel, I'm hard forcing this Ezreal comp every single time. If not, I still build AD flex items. I'm going to be focusing more so on the melee ones instead. I'm going to try to go for like the Riven Rerolls, the Yone Rerolls, similar to the previous patches. They're just my go-to comps, but like obviously you have your own go-to comps. Like my friend, he loves playing Punk, and he will play Punk from like any position, and he does pretty decently. But that's not for me. I don't like hard forcing a comp that much, but for him, he loves playing Punk. He knows everything there is to know about Punk, and yeah, he goes for it even if he doesn't have many jinxes, which I find crazy. But like another thing you could do is like look for any headliner in the S or A tier comps, and if you see one of them, just like pick it and force it if you have like any semi-decent items for it. It's not the optimal way to play, but it is one way to play. And if you get like Katarina headliner and you have like 1 or 2 Katarinas on your bench, just like hard force it. You don't need that many items for Katarina. You only need 2 of them because she gets the other one from Superfan. So even if you have no items for her, it's pretty possible that you get something like completely usable on her by the time you get all your items. But let me know what comps you are most likely going to be playing a ton. What type of strategies are you employing? You could write down like kind of like the flow chart-ish thing here, like if this then that, or like if not this I do this instead, in the comments down below. That'd be kind of fun to kind of read. But that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. And by the way, Ashmu does do coaching, so you could like DM him on Discord or like Twitter, wherever you can, to like get his attention and see where that goes, because he's like a very good player. So that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully I see you all in the next video.